You're listening to Pointing Pointers, the Point to Point podcast. Hello, I'm Ben Atkins from Pointing Pointers. This is episode 10, and I'm delighted to say we're joined today by Nicki Reynolds from Redmills, who you'll have heard many times so far this season are our sponsors along with the PPRA. So Nicki, thanks so much for coming along today. Can you tell us first and foremost a bit about your role with Redmills?
Yeah, no problem. So I am part of the nutrition support team in the UK, and my role is national, so I cover the whole country. And primarily I go out there to support the reps in how they are looking after their trainers. So when a slightly more technical problem might crop up, something that the rep might want a bit more support with in order to ensure the trainer's well looked after, then I will get involved at that stage.
So we are here at Fairfield Stud in Lincolnshire, and this room used to be the grain store where all the grain was heaped in this corner, sent in an auger down a hole somewhere here behind the camera and milled downstairs. And every horse would pretty much get a similar thing every day. And we're seeing more and more now, Nicki, that there's a wide acceptance of the fact that horses are individuals and need to be fed as such. And you've got a lot of options in your range. And so let's play a game. Hypothetically, I'm a point-to-point trainer, and you're a Redmills rep that's just arrived here for the first time. And we'll go through some horses that are on the yard and talk through what might be the options. So first of all, I've just got a horse from the sales, got him back, realised that he's got pretty high-grade ulcers, and I've treated him. He's had 2 weeks of Gastrogard or something similar. We've maybe had the vet involved, and he's ready to start getting in some work and being fed. What would you recommend as a good base ration?
Okay, so first and foremost, we'll be looking at the forage intake for a horse like that and making sure that we are getting as much forage, whether that be hay or haylage, and possibly some grass and turnout as possible in order to try and sort of manage and keep those risk factors for him developing further ulcers to a minimum. And then from the hard feed point of view, we would be certainly looking to feed a low starch feed. And we do know that higher starch diets are more inclined to cause ulcers when other management factors aren't being managed well too. So certainly we'd go down the low starch route. We'd probably look at our horse care feeds. So the care package actually includes a gastric acid buffer, for example, as well as pre and probiotics. Being low starch as well, obviously just sort of, hopefully keeps the risk as low as possible.
Okay, fantastic. And let's say another horse that we've got on the yard is a bit of a fussy eater, a poor doer, as some may say, and we struggle to get weight on them. Is there anything that you've got in your range that could help a horse like that?
Yeah, certainly. So sometimes that scenario often fits the post-ulcer scenario as well.
Sure.
So we would probably be looking at very similar things, certainly going down the lower starch route. If a horse is a bit of a poor doer and just not doing quite as well, sometimes that problem can be linked to the hindgut. If the hindgut isn't in as sort of a thriving condition as it could be, which could be down to a whole bunch of things. But again, we would be making sure that forage intake is optimal and that it's a good quality forage as well. Most likely going down the route of one of our lower starch options, again, just to manage that risk potentially to the hindgut. We have products such as Define and Shine, which is a sort of top dress feed, and it's a really high oil and high protein addition to the diet, if you like, but you don't need to feed very much of it. So even just a cupful or 2 cupfuls a day on top of your hard feed ration can actually go a long way to promote top line, coat condition, and just that little bit of extra weight gain if that's what you're looking for.
Okay, so speaking of the hindgut, I know that Redmills don't necessarily make an alfalfa chop or something similar, but I assume that's something that you would recommend to give alongside your feeds. Yeah,
absolutely. Chaff is really important, and certainly, over the last 10 years, we've definitely seen an increase in its use across the racing industry. The key things with any chaff is that the horse is actually eating it. And I know that perhaps sounds a silly thing to say, but if you've picked a chaff that you think is the perfect chaff, but the horse isn't eating it, then it's pointless. So, the key thing is find a chaff that they like, that is palatable and that they want to eat. My preference is I usually that you try and find a chaff that is a blend, so it's come from a blend of different fibres.
Okay.
Because that variety is what is best for the hindgut. that doesn't mean to say that a product that is sort of pure alfalfa based is a bad thing. It absolutely isn't. It can be a very good thing, and it's a great one to support horses in hard work as well.
Okay, so again, going back to my hypothetical string of horses that I'm training, I've got one that's tied up a couple of times as we've upped his or her work. Am I right in thinking it's probably going to be similar again? You're going to be looking for some lower starch options, or is that?
Yeah, certainly. If we do have some, and it's a really common time for horses to tie up as the workload increases. So certainly one thing we know about tying up is any kind of changes to daily routine. Even sometimes something as simple as a horse who's used to being turned out for an hour every day and then for one day doesn't get that turnout. If the horse is vulnerable enough to tying up, then that can be enough to trigger an episode. But certainly keeping a low starch feed going into a horse like that will limit, number one, the risk of the episode occurring, and also the actual severity of the damage that occurs during the episode. We would also make sure that they're on a higher intake of antioxidants, so probably a higher intake over and above what any feed can provide. So we would look at a supplement to do that. The Foreign Equine Muscle Max provides additional vitamin E and selenium and some lysine as well, which is a really important amino acid for muscle repair. And some B-vits in there as well, which help along with the carbohydrate and protein metabolism, but also actually maintain an appetite in horses like that as well, where sometimes the appetite can take a hit.
Yeah, sure. Sister company Foreign Equine have obviously got some fantastic products to go alongside your feeds. And so let's say I've got a horse who doesn't really show some of these fragilities and is just on the cusp of running and is in hard work and taking it well. There's got to still be a place in the feed regime for a high starch, punchy feed, right? You know, it's not all bad.
Absolutely. Starch has become a little bit of a dirty word within the industry over, sort of recent years. And I think that is unfair. I think starch, you need to really understand how to feed, I think, to feed those higher starch feeds. And we've got some fantastic trainers that we look after that have great amounts of success on a racehorse cube or on our cooked mix, for example, which is basically a racehorse mix. And they are traditional oats, barley, maize, high starch, high cereal grain feeds. It's about picking ones that where the cereal grains have been, sort of processed to ensure optimal digestion and absorption of the nutrients in there, and just feeding them correctly. So even feeding slightly smaller meals, more frequently, that will keep the actual starch intake down. So it might be a 30% starch feed, but if you fed 4 kilos of that, then that's going to be a lot more starch going in than, say, if you fed 1 kilo at one time. So starch absolutely is not the enemy. You've just got to pick it for the right horses and to actually think a little bit more carefully about how you feed it.
Okay, sure. That makes sense. And so the same horse runs on Saturday, and on Sunday morning I come in to do the feeds. Should I be changing something? I know that mashes are becoming quite popular in the marketplace as well. I know you've perhaps got some products in development along that line, but how would you feed a horse differently the day after a very hard piece of work or a race?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think there'd probably be lots of different answers or opinions, perhaps, on that one. From our point of view, we very much like the diet really should be as consistent as possible. So post-race, the theory was always very much of drop the protein, drop everything really, almost detox them. I've heard that word on many an occasion. Whereas actually I think a lot's coming from human research now, and we understand there's probably a need to keep that protein in there in order for muscle repair to take place. And the other thing then, as exactly like you said, Ben, mashes have become really popular, and we get asked a lot about recovery mashes. Yeah. And that's absolutely fine, and there's definitely a place for mashes within the industry. As you said, we are in the process of developing a mash to fit into our care range, which is really exciting. And there are some trainers out there at the moment trialling it for us, and it's going really, really well. So we're hoping that will become available. The key thing with any mash when you use it is that it fits in with your diet regime. So it's not something like a total curveball to the diet. That's not good for the hindgut.
No.
The hindgut needs consistency. It needs variety, but it needs that variety to be consistent.
Yes.
So if you just suddenly chuck in, if you're on a low starch diet and you suddenly chuck in a higher starch mash or vice versa, then that might have the potential to cause a little bit of upset there. Some horses would be fine, others might be slightly more vulnerable to it. So yeah, definitely there's a really good place for a mash, and mashes can be fantastic from the point of view of sort of hiding supplements in them, and definitely rehydration. That's the big thing for a mash. But yeah, just pick one carefully and make sure that it is, sort of suiting the overall tone of your diet. So it's not just suddenly something that's a real change, for that horse.
Someone said to me once that horses don't like surprises, both in their work and in their feed, and I think there's a lot of truth.
There's so much truth to that, and that's a really meaningful thing, actually. Absolutely, it's keep it consistent. Don't give them too many surprises.
So as you know, I operate here at Fairfield Stud, and you guys came in, had a look at the grass and the haylage and the hay that we were feeding as a base level, had a look at what might be missing or what we had an excess of perhaps, and worked with us then to supplement that with the right kind of feeds for the horses we've got here. Is that what people can expect if they start to feed Redmills?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly for our current trainers as well, forage is a huge part of the diet and really is the foundation of the diet, and we have to try and pick a hard feed that will complement your forage and ensure that the horses are getting everything they need. So sometimes we'll get results back on forages where there is some quirky results and perhaps some potential problems. But that's where the hard feed comes in. It's there to balance those problems out most of the time. And it's very, very rare that we ever turn around and say, oh, you can't feed this or don't do this. But it might be that if you've got a really good strong hay or haylage with a fantastic protein, maybe even sort of 15 or 16%, which does happen, then we might be looking to feed more of a 10% cube rather than a 14% cube. So yeah, it's great to know what's in your forage, and it's great to know then how best to match the hard feed and potentially some supplements to complement it as best as possible.
Absolutely, it makes sense, doesn't it? If the forage is the thing they've got access to all day and all
time,
night,
hopefully.
You want to know what's in it. As we found out, we had some very pokey haylage, and once we'd counteracted that, things got a bit more manageable.
Yes, absolutely. It can have a definite impact, and I think trainers have certainly come on board with that over the last few years. I think they understand much better now that the forage is almost equally as important to get right as getting the hard feed right as well. So
fascinating. So people can go on the website and have a look at who their area rep might be, get in touch, and I recommend you do that. There really is a fantastic support from Redmills. Nicki, thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for coming in.
Problem.
And
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have you again.
Thank you very much.
So back to me and Sam on Zoom.
So the observer amongst you will realise that it isn't, in fact, Sam with me this week. I'm joined, as I have been many times before on this podcast, by Hunter Chase expert, it's fair to say, the punter's friend, Darran Pearce. Darran, how are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm good, Ben. Yeah, sometimes I am. I try my hardest anyway.
So Sam's MIA, and by which I don't mean the popular artiste, I mean missing in action after a big day on the Tuesday at Cheltenham. We're recording this late on Tuesday night, so thanks very much for that, Darran. But Sam is yet to return to the land of communication. Right. So I can only assume he's had a good one. But we are going to take a look, obviously, at the Foxhunters for this Friday. And what we're going to do, Darran, if it's okay with you, is we're going to go through in betting order. And very simply, I want a yes, a no, or a maybe in terms of whether the horse in question can win the race. Then we're going to go back and have a much more detailed look through the card, look through the race, and then come to our conclusions. So just before I do that, we need to talk about one thing.
Yeah.
It's on the Line has been bought last week by JP McManus, which took my eye out when I logged on to have a little look, and the colours are up, all everything's up in lights. And I thought, hang on about, I'm sure he's in white and black last time. So yeah, I mean, an undisclosed fee, I believe, but pretty catches the eye, that.
Yeah, I'd imagine that he's paid a fair bit of money, probably certainly more than what the race is worth to the winner. It's just over 24 grand. I've got half a feeling he may have next year's Grand National in mind with this horse. I mean, he's an out-and-out stayer. So as much as he obviously enjoys having winners at Cheltenham, he's had the winner of this race in the past. I just wonder whether, being a 7-year-old, he'll be 8 next year. Grand National could be the target for him.
Yeah, there's got to be some reason behind it.
I think it's more than just winning a Foxhunters or a Hunter Chase, as it's called now. Obviously, can't say Foxhunters.
Right, let's just say its full name once properly now, and then we can just do whatever we like.
Good idea.
It's the St James's Place Festival Challenge Cup Open Hunters Chase, a Class 2 for 5-year-olds plus. Run over 3 miles, 2.5 furlongs on the new course. So, yes, no, maybe, Darren.
Yep.
Can they win the race? It's on the line.
Yes.
Burns Lock.
Probably not with the ground.
That's not a maybe or a no. Yes, Darren.
Well,
do you want to clarify the rules of the game for you?
Yes. Okay, I'll say maybe.
Okay. Billaway.
Maybe.
Premier Magic.
Maybe.
Sam Crow.
No chance.
Vorsoleil.
No chance.
Seeing Nominee.
Yes.
Strong. Time Leader.
Well, maybe I'll explain more.
It's quite difficult to distill it, isn't it?
Well, it's difficult when it's ground related.
Yes, fair enough.
Yeah.
Quintin's Man.
Yes.
Secret Investor.
I'd probably lean towards no.
Django.
No.
Shanty Flyer looks like it's. Is it still running? We're doing this before final deck, so apologies. We will come to that.
I'd imagine so. I don't see why you wouldn't.
Maybe the colours aren't loaded into the system.
Oh yes, yeah. I think that's occasionally the Racing Post goes a bit rogue with colours for some reason.
Or as Sam affectionately called him on Nick Look Daily last week, Shantu Magic, but it is for clarity Shanty Flyer. Can it win the race, Darren? Yes, no, maybe.
Maybe.
Ramillies.
I mean, he probably won't run because he ran terribly at Gorham Park on Saturday. But yeah, even if he did turn up, no.
From the heart.
No chance.
Okay, right. So I think what we can deduce from that before we look at prices, which of course is the most important thing, Darren, in punting.
Yes.
I think it's fair to say it's fairly open, although I think the top of the market, the top 3 horses in the market may well be the answer.
I think what we've got, I mean, there's obviously a smaller field than usual. I mean, 14 at the moment, Rambalay surely isn't going to turn up. Maybe 1 or 2 others might decide on the ground that they're not going to turn up either. I mean, obviously, we've raced on the old course today, and it was heavy, wasn't it? It wasn't even heavy soft in places. It was heavy. The new course will probably be better, fresh ground, which they only used for the Gold Cup previously, so that'll probably help. But there's more rain due Thursday into Friday, so I think surely we're going to be looking at heavy ground. I mean, it certainly isn't going to be any better than soft. So that might rule, the likes of Time Leader, who clearly doesn't want heavy ground, they may just decide not to even bother running him and just keeping him for Aintree. So we could be looking at even 12, 11, depending on what happens at declaration time tomorrow. And I think one of the reasons for that is there were a lot less no hopers. I mean, I know theoretically Premier Magic won at 66-1 last year, but he shouldn't have been 66-1. I mean, he was much shorter in the morning, just happened to drift just before the off for whatever reason. And usually you get a few social runners, jockeys.
Say, there's not many days out in this lineup, is there?
No, most of them have some sort of chance. Now the weather's probably hindering some of their chances, but they're, apart from the complete outsider, I mean, even Sam. I mean, I don't fancy Sam Crow at all, but I mean, if he did go and win, it wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world. So, although we've got a smaller field, I think it should be a renewal that's up to scratch.
Yes. Okay. So let's assume that Ramillies doesn't run. You've already said that from the heart, you've said has no chance, so we won't spend too much on that. Apologies if your connections are from the heart, and we hope you prove us wrong, sincerely. Shantu Flyer, Sam. I am actually in Sam's honour tonight, Darren. I have cracked open a bottle of red. He's normally drunk at least 2 bottles before we do the podcast. This is my first glass. So let's start with Shantu Flyer.
So you're also saying that we've ridden as many Fox Hunter winners as Sam as well, weren't you, earlier?
Yeah, between us. Yeah, between us. Yeah. We have. Yeah, you're exactly right there, Darren. Yeah, poor old Sammy. Shantu Flyer. So Miss Olive Nichols has clearly proven that she's a capable pilot and trained by Sam Loxton, a good servant to many yards in the family.
Yep.
I mean, would you say, on balance, that is the closest thing in here to a social runner?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, his record at Cheltenham is incredible. He's run 13 times at Cheltenham. He's won twice, finished second 5 times, and third 3 times. And his record at the festival, he fell in the National Hunter Chase in 2016, and this is how far we're going back with him. He was second, beaten a neck in the Ultima of 2018, second in the 2019 Fox Hunter, third in the Fox Hunter the following year. In the Kinmure, he was third in 2021, and then he was third in this race, just 3 lengths behind Premier Magic last year. Whether he wants the ground as testing as it's likely to be, I'm not so sure. As he sort of showed in the 4 miler the last 2 years, he's running the 4 miler at Hunter Chase. Like, he doesn't stay 4 miles. He probably said it's slightly better last year than he did under David Maxwell the year before. Mm-hmm. But this is likely, if the weather forecast is correct, this is likely to be a real test of stamina, and that might just hinder his chances. I mean, is he? He's unlikely to suddenly go and win at the festival at the age of 14. However, given his record at Cheltenham, if he does see it out in the soft ground, surely he's going to be in the, he got every chance of being in the top 4 or 5, I would say. But, and who's to rule out that he won't be in the top 3 again? I mean, his record at Presby Park is just incredible.
Yeah.
And I should add, I think he's in as good form as he was last year. That 5th at Taunton behind Regatta du Bon, I know you've got a share in, that is an incredible piece of form. And he ran really well, given the trip is on the short side for him, and he tried to keep up with Benny's King. They had a real furious gallop there.
They did.
And I thought that he ran with great credit there. He obviously had a couple of wins a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, one was a walkover. The other one, he beat Singapore Saga, which is
2 in a day.
Form again. Yeah, 2 in a day.
The form of his life.
So I think he's still capable of running to a high level. So
fair enough.
Yeah,
that's probably doing a great disservice there. I don't know. You see some of these household names almost just keep coming back for more, and you start thinking surely the better days, the best days are behind them. But like you say, it's got recent form in the book. Maybe I'm being unfair there, and fair play. Right, Django. Miss Venetia Collins has proved. Oh, sorry,
Victoria. Yeah, Victoria.
It's not Venetia. Miss Victoria Collins has proved that she knows how to get one ready for a race like this.
She does.
Knows where the winning post is at Cheltenham.
Yeah, very much so.
And Django's known for Lawn Hope.
No, used to be in the Judith Wilson colours. He ran almost every week, as most horses tend to in the David Pipe. But I mean, Victoria's done a hell of a job with him, because the horse is rated 100. Now, we mentioned that Regatta de Blanc form at Taunton. He finished second at 66-1. He then beat T Clipper at Warwick. Okay, T Clipper idled a bit, but I still thought he.
Understatement of the year, Darren.
Well, I mean, I back Django, so I'm a little bit biased. But I was quite glad that he idled. But even if he'd have been second to T Clipper, it's still a decent effort. And then at Haydock, he went off favourite in the Royce, probably just got stuck in the ground. I mean, I thought he would be fine on it, but he was really, really bad. And I don't think he was ever entirely happy. I completely understand why they're going for this race. Do I think he can win? No. Do I think he can finish halfway up the field? Yeah. He should be capable of running a decent enough race. Obviously, if it got really testing again, that might not be in his favour. But I mean, he was rated 100 when they ran him at Taunton. He's now up to 129. They've improved him £29. And I actually think that's probably around about the right mark, given the form he has shown so far this season. So, yeah, in some ways, he's probably a social runner, but he's a social runner who could run well without hitting the frame.
Yeah. I mean, look, let's just say it as it is here. Like, there's absolutely no shame whatsoever in running your horse at Cheltenham because you think it can not disgrace yourself in a race, gives everyone a great deal of fun. There's no. What I'm saying is we shouldn't be poo-pooing social runners on the basis that they aren't guaranteed to win, because that isn't how racing works, is it?
If I owned Django, I'd be running him in this race.
Yeah, 100%.
Put it there. I'd be running it because he fully deserves to take his chance.
Yeah, you're talking to the man, Darran, that's entered a horse that's still a maiden in a hunter chase with blinkers on. So
tremendous.
In terms of, I wouldn't take my race planning too seriously. Yeah, that's a different story altogether. But so let's move on quickly to Secret Investor. So I was at a preview night for the Pendle partnership with Nichols, and it was one of the only ones he did on the circuit this time. And I kind of misquoted him really on the NLD section that we do, saying that he was bullish about him. I don't think he was really. I wasn't detecting strong.
He wasn't vibes. Yeah, he wasn't originally going to be running in the race. All the talk was that.
I mean, it's hard to fancy on that basis.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Nichols said in his stable tour in the Post back in November that he'd be aimed at Stratford again, which obviously he was a very good winner of last season. And he doesn't like Cheltenham. I mean, I'm not sure why he would think that, because I'm pretty sure his only Cheltenham run was when he fell at the first last year. So not really talking too much on that. Let me just double check that he hasn't run at Cheltenham and get to sit at. Oh no, he did. Did he have another run? Oh yeah, he was 10th. In what was then called the Caspian Caviar Gold Cup. I still wouldn't, he's only had 2 runs, and one of them he fell at the first. But I think Paul Nichols was trying to qualify Laylor for the race. He didn't get to qualify him because he was only 4th or 5th at Taunton when he was trying to get his second qualifying run. So I think this is the substitute. He was lucky to win at Fakenham. Obviously, Gina and Tom's horse fell at the last when looking like it was going to win.
That's carrying probably the chunkiest bet I've had this year. That was still hurts, that one.
Yeah, I was on Secret Investor, so I hold my hands up. I obviously got very, very lucky. But he Natalie after the race again said not going to Cheltenham. Newbury in a couple of weeks would be the next run, and obviously working back from Stratford. So I just get the feeling that Paul's thought, well, I haven't qualified Laylor. I'll stick him in, see how many runners there are. There's not many runners. He doesn't really like testing ground either. He obviously got very lucky at Fakenham, but he travelled well up to a point, and then he just bottomed out. So, yeah, he obviously has the class to win this, but I think he's probably not. He's not being aimed to peak at Cheltenham. He's being aimed to peak at Stratford at the end of May. So I would imagine it's only because he's got nothing else. He loves running a horse in the race, and I think that's purely why this horse has ended up with an entry. If Laylor had qualified, I don't think we'd be seeing Secret Investor. Having said that, of course, Premier Magic wasn't meant to run in the race last year. Highway Jewel was meant to run in the race, and look what happened there.
Yeah. We will come to him very shortly. So Quintin's man next. Darren Andrews on board for John Hurd. At some point this year, I really fancied this horse, and I can't quite remember why I've gone off it, other than maybe I've forgotten about it. Maybe this could be our forgotten horse.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I've backed 2 horses in the race. He could be my third that I end up backing.
Interesting.
Obviously, we know he handles the course and distance.
Yeah.
I think the ground was probably quick enough when he won the intermediate final as well. It's what put me off backing him on that night, because he just looked like a horse who wanted a real test of stamina plus testing ground.
Yeah.
But he got away with it there. He didn't get away with it at Stratford, and he clearly hated Stratford, which, you know, not all horses handled Stratford. And the fact he was 20 lengths behind seemed nominate is neither here or there, because it just wasn't his running. Had a couple of runs in points, finishing third both times. I think the third at Chipley is probably better form than I sort of gave it credit for at the time. And Darran said after he won at Wincanton that he didn't handle, or he wouldn't have handled Weybridge. They only ran him there because it's their local course. The Wincanton effort was really good. I mean, I know you could sort of say, well, Laylor was beaten at Taunton the time after that, but I think the quick run back, given Laylor been off the track for so long, and that Taunton race was a good race as well, I wouldn't hinder the form by the fact that Laylor was beaten there. Really solid run in Wincanton. I fancied him at Haydock in the Walrus because I thought, even though he was dropping in trip, I thought the real bottomless ground would suit. He still managed to get himself outpaced, which surprised me. Darran got him into contention, and coming towards the last, I thought he was going to win, because I thought, great, he's finally got a head of steam up. And then he sort of wandered around on the run-in and sort of flattened out. I just wonder whether the move that he had to make to catch up paid in the closing stages, and he didn't have quite enough left.
So interestingly, Darran, I'm just looking at the other Darran's WhatsApps to me that night.
Yeah.
Hope you don't mind me spilling beans on this babe. He texted me saying a bit of pillow talk, Darran Andrews.
Yeah.
Thought I had it jumping the last, but had to switch and didn't get a clear run. It was horrendous ground, so deep and wet. I've only just got in the door. So
yeah. But there we go. That even he thought he was going to win jumping the last.
And had to switch and didn't get a clear run. So it's interesting, isn't it? And he said basically roll on Cheltenham now. So
look, he stays. Look, you know, we'll
I've talked myself back into backing him.
Well, we'll go. Look, 7-year-olds don't have a great recent record in this race. You tend to want to be 10 or 11. I'll mention it when we get to it. It's on the line as well. But Quinton's man's slightly different because we know he stays. I think a few younger horses have improved and stand that. A horse like Famous Claremont, a horse like On the Fringe, before he went on to win it, he had 2 or 3 goes before he even won at Cheltenham, and he looked a non-stayer. We know Quinton's man stays. We know he handles testing ground. That's going to be a big plus. And with the ground looking in his favour, like I say, he is likely to possibly be my third bet in the contest.
Could be with you there, which would be very boring because I think we're both like the same horses here. Time leader.
If the ground wasn't heavy and it was like good to soft, I'd give Time Leader a chance for sure. And I was tossing up between him and Quinton's man, waiting to see what the weather was going to do. You know, whether they even send him or not, because he clearly hates heavy ground. He really struggled it. And the official ground was soft at Chadsley in December when he was pulled up. I think it was more testing than that. And when they sent him up to Carlisle last year, in fact, it was almost basically a year ago. It was this Sunday after Cheltenham, after he won the Stratford Hunter Chase, which took place a couple of days ago. He hated the ground. Apparently he bled, but he just didn't seem to enjoy the ground. He got outstayed. Obviously, later on in the season, he went to Cartmel and beat Gabbro, which is looking a very strong piece of form now.
Yeah.
And he stayed quite well around Cartmel, but we're talking about Cheltenham, 3.25 miles in soft ground. That's very different to what he had at Cartmel. I personally, and Joe's, if he listens to this, he'd probably disagree with me. I personally wouldn't run him at Cheltenham, and I'd be all about Adrian.
This horse is trained by Miss Hannah Roach.
Yes, but we know that Joe still drives the lorry box.
Correct.
So look, he was great fifth at Aintree last year, and he'll have a leading chance at Aintree. He looked very good at Hereford when he beat Caprol. Obviously, when Cat Tiger ran out with David Maxwell, I think he probably would have won anyway. He looked that good. And And I think even reading between the lines, I think Joe's obviously concerned about it carrying on raining as well. So,
Hannah.
yeah. Well, no, this is Joe because this is what Joe's put on the forum.
Okay,
So this is
fine.
what Joe said.
Fine.
So
We'll have that
you
one.
know, the heavier the ground, the less his chance.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, the horse that I've made no secret about liking next, Seem Nominee. Now, why don't you think the jockey is published yet? Why isn't John Dawson jocked up?
I'm not sure. It could just be they forgot. I don't know.
Yeah, so
Good question.
I like the horse. I like
Unless
John Dawson.
he's got injured before.
Well, I don't
We don't
think so.
know.
He won on a maiden yesterday. He won on a young horse maiden yesterday, on the day before yesterday. So
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we're expecting that he will be riding, aren't we?
yes,
Essentially.
and that probably would be. It definitely. It wouldn't put me. I wouldn't back it. I wouldn't not back it just because John's not on it. But I would be a lot sweeter on it with John. He knows the horse. He rides it lovely. He's cracking jockey.
Yeah.
So I, in preparation for this, spoke to Fiona this morning and just checked that she didn't have any concerns about the ground, and just checked that what I was reading in terms of her form was as it looks. And yeah, she confirmed that she has no fear of the ground, and she said if anything, it was heavy down the back at Wetherby, and she seemed to cope with it very well. You could say watching that race that she enjoyed it, which is maybe even sweeter on this horse. Again, we'll come to it when we conclude, but this would be my idea of the each way play that I want to make in this race. And yeah, she's just one of those horses that the market will continue to dismiss. I don't know why, really. I mean, she's got, and especially in the sort of test it's going to be, 3-2 heavy ground. She's got £7 allowance. Nothing else in the race has, and she's proven she's got a very good level of form.
Yeah, look, I hold my hands up. It's taken a little bit of time for me to sort of fully believe what she's capable
Yeah, I know
of.
what you mean, and and I think the people are still there, and that's why the market continues to sort of dismiss it. Like there is certain horses that always seems to be.
Well,
it's a bit like that for Galopin Deschamps for 3 years.
well, yeah, but I mean, the thing is, you could pick all sorts of holes in her form. Like she jumped terribly in the intermediate. She jumped terribly in the intermediate final at Cheltenham a couple of years ago, when third behind Late Night Fumble. But obviously that was her first run under rules, so you can forgive her that. When she won at Stratford, beating Cap Royal, the favourite that Olive Nichols rode, Fear of Flay, hated the ground, and Cap Royal probably didn't enjoy the ground either, and probably doesn't quite. He's probably better over shorter than 2 mile 6. So my thinking was, she's the only one who's been good enough to win and has handled the conditions. She was obviously then beaten in the mare's race on Hunter Chase night by Miss Seagreen, which on the face of it isn't great form, but it was a bit of a funny race. She probably ought to have won. Stratford John Corbett Cup, I mean, that is pretty poor form if you take it, just by bare facts. Brave Starlight's been stuffed a couple of times on in marks in the low hundreds in handicaps. So on the face of it, not great form, and they didn't go much of a pace though. So it could just be that her class saw her win the race, despite the fact she didn't win by very far. Obviously, she was beaten by Wagner at Alnwick on a seasonal return, but she was beaten on her first 2 starts last season as well. Obviously, Wagner has been a bit of a winning machine and is going to America next month, isn't he? But I still didn't really believe. And at Wetherby, I backed Fairly Famous, who hated the ground and didn't run his race. However, the more I think about it, the more I think Benny's King has run his race. I know he's better over shorter.
Yeah.
But
2
miles, I watched the race back the other night and I thought, even if this race was over 2 mile 6, Sin Nominate would still win, because she's absolutely travelling all over Benny's King. in races, she travels so well, and she jumped really well at Wetherby. And I don't think it matters what the distance was. I think she still beats Benny's King. Given what Benny's King did at Leicester last week, for me, I've come around to the thinking that is the best piece of Hunter Chase form in this country this season.
Strong claim, but I wouldn't.
It is a strong claim, yeah. Because to be fair, we've seen some top class Hunter Chases. I'd say both ones at Taunton have been good. But I think the fact she's beaten Benny's King by 15 legs, if the race was over 2 miles 6, John would have set her alight earlier, and I think she still wins by maybe not quite as far as 15, but I think she still wins comfortably. So, like I say, I've come around to the thinking that is a very strong piece of form. Now, my one slight concern, well, 2 slight concerns. One is Cheltenham, because you do have to pay attention to the fact she was second and she didn't jump well the first time.
She does have a tendency to jump out to her right as well.
Yeah. And the other one would be stamina. Now, I agree with Fiona. I think she wants soft or heavy ground. That Stratford John Corbett run, as I've mentioned, wasn't a true test of stamina. The time was ridiculously slow compared to the big race on the evening. I have written it down somewhere. Let me just check what the time difference was. So Secret Investor clocked 22 seconds quicker, obviously over the same course and distance, and Secret Investor was carrying £7 more. That's how slow that race was run. So it wasn't a test of stamina at all. So there is, my one concern is, as I've mentioned, we know Quinton's Man stays, we know it's on the line stays, but is she a young horse that might not be quite ready to see out 3.25 miles at Cheltenham?
I'm heavy going.
Yeah. This is more than factored into her price, however, so that's why I've backed her, because she should be shorter than 8. I personally would have her in single figures.
It's interesting. Just looking at the time of that Wetherby race where she beat Benny's King. That was actually very slow. Slower than average by a minute. Apparently, 7 minutes.
Yeah, I think the ground was really testing that day.
7 minutes, 0.31 seconds. Yeah. So anyway, before we go down the rabbit hole in times, basically what you're saying is you're not entirely sure she's got the stamina. You got a question mark over the stamina.
If she was 7-8 to 1, that would be enough to put me off. She isn't. Bet3 at the time recorded Bet365 or 18, so that is way too big. So I am more than prepared. In fact, I already have backed her. I'm more than prepared to back her with those two slight queries in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. In that race against Benny's King as well, she was carrying it 11:13. Just have a look at that. So she actually gets to carry nearly half a stone less in this race.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. We are a good way through now. Vorselay.
I mean, David Christie said that he's come back to something like his best form, but I mean, his 3 runs so far this season have not been great. He ran a very solid 7th last year, despite the fact he went off favourite. David has said that he was a sick horse afterwards. Second behind It's on the Line at Punchestown, second behind Billaway at Downpatrick, second behind Secret Investor at Stratford. Very solid form. His 3 runs this year, nowhere near the level. Stuffed 29 lengths by It's on the Line at Downroyal on Boxing Day. And he hates testing ground. He could be one again that doesn't travel over just purely because it's gone really testing. David said he's a spring horse. He isn't going to get spring ground at Cheltenham on Friday.
Well, we haven't had spring yet, so and as ridiculous as it sounds, I was obviously in the breeding game as well at a small level, and talking to people about trying to get mares in seasons, covered and things at the moment, and everything's cycling later. People think, horses' coats aren't coming through. If you're a spring horse, a lot of that is about, the external conditions, and spring isn't here, I'm sad to say. I can't have Horseley at all. Let's move on to the Mercurial. What are we going to go for? Sam Crow. What are we going to do with Sam Crow? And why is it going to turn to Chase?
I honestly, I don't fancy Sam Crow at all. I mean, horses like him don't win this race anymore. Now, I'm sure it'll happen one day that a horse who has, achieved a very high rating like he has, up to a mark of 160 over fences, 163 over hurdles, will probably win this race again at some point. I just don't think it'll be Sam Crow. I mean, he was better form in points last year than he is this year. He was third. He looked a bit laboured. I've seen the finish of that Pal Harbour run. He just looked a bit laboured for me behind Lifetime Ambition, who apparently he's going for entry. It's not like it's horrendous form, but he just strikes me as the type of horse who, back under rules, I reckon he could just chuck it in. He'd be like, I don't fancy this again. He's dropped that into points, and he's shown, especially last year or last season, he showed a high level of form still. But I just query what he's capable of doing. If you go on Racing Post ratings, 9 of the last 10 winners of this race have had to run to an RPR of 141 to win.
Yeah,
question you've got to ask yourself: is Sam Crow still capable of running to a mark of 141? I don't think he is.
Not on recent evidence.
I think he's more likely to pull up than he is to win. Let's put it that way.
Unless this is the never mind all the handicap plots. Gordon's actually just plotted one up for the Foxhunters, and he's going to get the juicy 14 to 1.
Yeah.
So right now we're getting into the business end of this. The highest English hope in the market, Premier Magic, who is currently 8 to 1. I was at Brocklesby the day he had his racecourse gallop, effectively,
yeah, I mean, when you win in a race at 1 to 10, that pretty much is what it is, isn't it?
In 7 minutes 20, by the way.
Yeah, it was really slow, wasn't it?
It literally was a racecourse gallop, and I said it before. The faster he went, the better he got. And look, I mean, this is probably our biggest chance, isn't it, of winning this from a British point of view.
I think he's around about the right price in the market. I'm quite neutral on his chance. Obviously, a very good run of the race last year. As I mentioned earlier, wasn't even meant to run in the race. Hated it in 2022, which is what put me off him last year, because he ran terribly. Bradley decides, I'm going to decide last year, and it worked a treat. Obviously, then he hacked up at the Hunter Chase night, beating Rebel Dawn Rising, who isn't really a horse that stays that far. Racing Post rating somehow managed to rate it higher than his win at the Cheltenham Festival, which is just absolutely bonkers.
And people wonder why people don't pay much attention to Racing Post.
Well, I mean, I know I've mentioned, but with Sam Crow, I had to give an average. I personally don't get that. Yeah, it's their metric, but I mean, someone on Twitter was trying to tell me that, he's improving. It shocked me, and then I had a look at why he said it, and it was like, oh, okay, because he's got up in the ratings. But it was a strange run for me. The run at obviously winning this race last year is much better than that May win. The concern for me, I mean, that Sheriff Hutton win, that form is pretty rubbish. Torograph hasn't won in points since he's transferred from Gordon Elliott's over here, and was absolutely stuffed at Catterick. I think he ended up pulling up last week. The Crewden Rogue obviously was well beaten in a maiden Hunter Chase at Leicester. So you can't get excited by that. All I think he's told us this season is he's got 4 legs, he's fit, and he's healthy. I've got no idea if he's in the same form he was last year, because those 2 wins he had at Chadsley Corbett and Garthorpe are much stronger pieces of form than the wins this season. So there was even though I wasn't sure about how he would handle Cheltenham, I knew he was in good form because he had proven it. For me, he hasn't proven that he's in the same sort of form. He could be. He clearly could be. Bradley knows what he's doing. I'm sure we have him absolutely cherry ripe for Friday.
If you look at the pattern, sorry, Darren. If you look at the pattern of what he's done, I mean, he's a very, very lightly racehorse.
Yeah.
And the pattern is very, very similar. So he got a race in and around Christmas, just after Christmas in 22.
Yeah, he was going to run at Chadsey again, but that meeting got called off, so they had to. That's why he ended up at Sheriff Hutton.
Yes, yeah, this time around, yeah, exactly. So he's basically last year he had a run just after Christmas on the day after Boxing Day, then the 5th of Feb, then won the festival. This year he's running the 14th of January and the 10th of Feb, so he's effectively a week behind in his prep or whatever. Yeah. So very, very similar pattern coming into the race, and you can he knows the time of his day, Brad.
Yeah, of course he does. Yeah, I Bradley massively respect his claims. I just think he's around about the right price because I think It's on the Line has improved. So given I think he's improved, I think he can make up that ground that he was beaten last year, especially the more testing the ground is. Is Premier Magic likely to have improved from 10 to 11? Probably not. That's why and like I say, we don't have any evidence on the racecourse this year as to whether he has or not. So he can be another double winner. We've had quite a few of those in recent years for sure. And I couldn't put anyone off backing him. Just for me, unless he drifted out again to a double figure price where I might want him on side. I just think at the moment, around about the 7-8 to 1 mark, I think that's about the right price for his chance.
Fair enough. Okay. Billaway, also currently 8 to 1, taking a bit of a walk today. Is that on the account of the ground or just the market sorting itself out, do you think? Or
I mean, he's got a great record in the race. I know he fell in the race last year, which I suppose might have been coming because, he's a horse who's taken a bit of a liberty at a fence from time to time over the years, but he was second, and first in the 3 previous renewals. So, and he was given the form he'd shown last season. Who's to say that he wouldn't have finished there or thereabouts last year as well? I think he probably would have done if he'd have got round. I mean, we'll mention It's on the Line shortly, but that second to It's on the Line was a good effort. He flew home, given that it was very testing ground. I think he could have been further forward because he usually makes his seasonal debut earlier in the season and he has a terrible first time out record. But I think this year, given he was running at Naas, which is a race he's run 4 years on the bounce, I think it wasn't. I think he was looking for his 5th win on the bounce in that contest. He clearly, I think Woolley has gone him a bit further forward and he's run better than he usually does on his seasonal reappearance. Even at the age of 12, I can't necessarily see him winning. But if he gets round as he did the 3 years prior to last year, he's surely got to be there or thereabouts, in the top 4 or 5. I would imagine.
Yeah, I may have dreamt this. I'm hoping you can confirm. I think I heard Patrick saying that it was his best chance of the week or something.
He might have done. I mean, he had that thing that ran today in the National Hunt Chase, which did go a favour in the end, didn't it, against Corbett's Cross, but was a bit disappointing. So yeah, I wouldn't know off the top of my head what else he is riding.
I'm gonna go on record, Darren, and say
okay. You go on record. You go on record.
It makes no odds if I'm wrong anyway, right? Sue me. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he said earlier in the week that he thought it was one of his best chances. Now, for me, he's just a bit too. I don't know. I think he's just a bit too old. Like, there's only so many times you can keep running that way and get away with it. And do you know what I mean? Just
look,
softly creasy, nursey. Oh, here I am. Like,
I struggle to see him win again. He's probably around about the right price again. Like I say, because he'll attract each way money, and I can completely understand why people would want to back him each way, giving his record in the race.
Yes. Good question, actually. How many places do you think are going to be off for with most bookmakers for this?
That's a very good question
Because
because
that is going to massively affect what I do here, and I think
it's
most people listening it will.
because look, let's say Ramone definitely isn't going to run, so that drops it down to 13.
Yeah,
Is David Christie still going to bring Vorsley over, even though it's testing ground? Is Hannah or Joe going to run time leader? So you suddenly start, could it be at 12, 11 runners? Are bookies then really going to go 4 places? Possibly someone like Sky Bet who like to
depends
go.
how the weeds. Depends how the weeds gone.
Well, potentially, yeah.
Yeah,
But usually, given this is usually a max field, you're looking at 4 or 5 places. But you know, I think most bookmakers might just go 3 places this year on the race, but certainly no more than 4 anyway.
no, fair enough. It's currently 3 in the non-run and no bet with Bet365. So yes, okay, let's get to the really sharp end of this and talk about. Do you know what? I was going to say let's talk about Ferns Lock and it's on the line. They're who we need to talk about. I just can't have Ferns Lock, Darren. A brilliant horse. For me, Aintree all over. Like I don't get the angle here. I just don't think it stays.
I'm led to believe that the owner has backed him at 8-1 a few months ago for the race, and that is why I believe he is. I mean, I don't know whether that is the only reason why he's running, but I personally think that's the reason why he's running. Because he screams Aintree.
Yeah,
Ruby Walsh thinks he screams Aintree.
We must be right then, Darren.
Well, exactly. David Christie's pretty much said the same thing. I think he's the best horse in the race. I think he's that good, but I think he's that good that he's not going to see 3 1/4 miles out, especially given the ground's is going to be testing. It's on the line outstayed him at Down Royal, and after that, I was like, how on earth is Ferns Lock going to outstay It's on the line over 2 furlongs further, unless the ground happens to be, genuinely good ground?
Which is not.
Which is not going to be, is it? Yeah, it's definitely not going to be that. The one thing in his favour is the smaller field because he's likely to make the running. My initial thinking was we were going to see 20 odd runners, and he would get taken on for the lead, and that would not help his seeing the trip out. Because it's not like he's really, really keen, but he's just a free going sort. He likes to bowl along out in front. And as we saw at Fairyhouse last Easter, when him and Billaway took each other on, neither of them had much left in the finish, and Animix managed to stay on past them. So the fact he might get an easier lead than I originally thought, that will help him. What isn't going to help him is the fact that it looks like it's going to be no better than soft, isn't it? By Friday, there's more rain in the forecast. I think there's every chance we could be looking at heavy, and that is not going to help him at all. So I'm not surprised that he's starting to take a walk in the market. He was favourite for quite a long time, and I thought he was the wrong favourite. I mean, if he got stupidly big, I probably would risk a few quid on him just in case, because I think if he happened to stay, he might well win. But the evidence for me suggests he isn't going to stay, and unless it miraculously dries up and the weather forecast completely changes, that's really going to hinder his chances.
Yes, completely agree. So I'm not going to.
But I think he wins at Aintree, all being well.
Yeah, I can't see Famous Clermont doing it at this rate, to be honest.
I think Ferns Lock is better than Famous. I mean, Famous Clermont is very good, but you'd have your doubts about him on what he's done so far this season, that he's at the level he was last year. And I think there's every chance that Ferns Lock could be a better horse, and he's likely to be out in front, and they may not see which way he goes as long as he comes out of Cheltenham. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it's on the line. Favourite at 9-4 currently. This would be my idea of the winner. Boring, I'm afraid. For me, it would be a win-only exchange play, as big as I can get it between now and the off.
Do you know what? He might trade bigger in the off. If he comes from as far back as he did last year in the race, like I watch, I sometimes watch the finishes back just to remind myself what happens. And I've not watched last year's Hunter Chase for a while, and so I watched it back the other night. I was like, blimey, he's miles behind, jumping 2 out, and he then disappears from shot because obviously focusing on the leaders, and he doesn't come back into shot until about at least half a furlong out. He might even be closer to the line than that, and obviously loose horses got in the way.
So it's an interesting thought, this. And you've kind of given me a bit of an idea, which I'll temper your enthusiasm for in a minute. But
yeah,
you could definitely, the way that this lad runs, at some point in running, you're probably going to get matched at 5, 6.0, 7.0, anything you like. If he, so there's a few points I want to make. One about the in running, which we can cover off now. The other thing is, this race is going to be pure carnage. It's got the potential to be an absolute hilarity from start to finish. So let's just cover off this in play betting angle first. So I actually tried a couple of things today on hot favourites. I backed State Man and Lottie Mouth, just put an in running 2.0 on to try and get matched. Now, both of them raced off the pace much further than you would expect by a long way. I thought State Man today ridden with supreme confidence, as Willie said himself, was sixth, jumping the fourth last or something. Lottie Mouth held up. I thought that it was nailed on to get matched at 2.0, and I thought that was a very sensible thing to do. Both I thought would win. I don't back odds on. It's against my philosophy. So my plan was to just get matched at evens and call it a do. Neither of them got matched. And we're not talking, we're not talking £1,000 here. We're talking small money and didn't get matched. So what I'm saying is, as much as It's on the Line could drift out because he's an absolute monkey and might do some really silly things during the race and look like he's not going to win until he wins, I wouldn't bet on, because of the liquidity in the market, the sheer volume, his connections, and his likely starting price, I wouldn't bet on the fact that he would actually drift, regardless of what he does in play.
The one thing that needs to highlight, I know we came from a long way back in this race last year, but Punchestown, he actually basically made all, pretty much when he beat Four Soleil, and Derek was just at him, and I backed Four Soleil that night. On It's on the Line at Punchestown. So I backed Four Soleil.
Oh yeah, I said true. I said true.
Oh, true. Sorry, true.
No, I was just thinking it was terrible to watch, but he did actually lead. He was basically ridden.
I thought Four Soleil was going to get him, and he was like, and even though Four Soleil made a pretty bad mistake at the last, I don't think he was ever going to get past It's on the Line, because even though he's a lazy horse, he keeps finding, and he's just the sort of horse that you want. So I don't think you could actually. It's not nailed on. He's going to come from a long way back, but I certainly don't think. I'd imagine he's probably going to be further back than nearer the pace, just because I think Fernslock's going to take him along a fair old gallop. And at Darran Royal, when he nabbed him, he was up there for a bit of way, and then got himself outpaced at 3 out before running on. Obviously, Derek wasn't aboard that day. Obviously, the Nace run was heart-stopping to watch for someone who'd backed the horse, because I thought Billaway was going to get him. He'd seen off Ramelais at the last, and then he just sort of off, oh my God, and then Billaway's flying, and I think Billaway's going to get him, but he picks up again. How many horses in really heavy ground pick up again when like that close to the line, having run as hard as they had?
Yeah,
it's a staggering performance
on heavy ground at Nace as well.
And it was really testing that day. Yeah. And that for me was like, this horse has got a lot of class, and he's just keeping something a little bit back, and he managed to fight. Most horses, Billaway would have won that race. He would have passed most horses, but not him. And he's got that just little bit of guts and determination, despite the fact he races lazy. I know it's a little bit of, it's straight, but some horses just like that. Also, cheap pieces are going back on, as they did for this race last year, and also at Aintree and Punchestown he wore them. He hasn't worn them since. And I think that'll probably help him. Obviously, JP's bought him. Mullins said it was his best chance of the week, and of course, he's already had Corbett's Cross win today, as we record this on Tuesday night. Derek's very confident as well. I really do think he's the one to beat. He is an out and out stayer, as I said about 7-year-olds. You know, got a horse like Ferns Lock, who's very classy, but doesn't look like he's going to stay this far at this moment. It's on the line. He's battle hardened. We know he's going to stay this far. We know he's all about stamina. The fact it's going to be heavy bottomless ground is going to draw that stamina even more into play. And in the context of this race, he's an unusual 7-year-old because he has that proven stamina.
Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely key. I think he's the right favourite, and I really think he's the most likely winner of the race.
Okay. So what I'm going to suggest here is that we each put up one as a straight win. We put up a well-priced each way horse. This is probably, I haven't read your column deliberately to not prejudice this conversation, because and you feel free to give that a big plug in a minute. And then a horse at a big price that's got a chance of hitting the frame, especially if there is some extra places on offer. Then people can, everyone with different risk profiles can do what they like. So they can put the win only one in an ACCA, or they can play for each way money with something more interesting. So your winner it's on the line for you.
Yep.
It is for me too. So we'll call that the NAP shock. The JP owned 9-4 favourite is our NAP. Thanks for listening. You've been great. But no, we've explained in great detail why we think that's the case.
By the way, I think he could go off shorter as well.
Yeah.
I at the time of recording, he's 9-4 Bet3 so far. I think that's too big. I can see him going off 7-4, 6-4.
Yeah, for the same reason that Embassy Gardens went off very short today, because as in this case today on Tuesday, the Willie Mullins accumulators start racking up. The bookies have to be defensive about the price on singles because they're standing to lose a load when the last one goes in. So, and obviously that didn't happen today, but he could be artificially sort of compressed his price, couldn't it? For that same reason, when everyone's looking through a JP own favourite on the Friday, when everyone's looking to get out of jail after the Gold Cup, you can just see that getting smashed, can't you, on the day? So maybe that should be our advice: back it early or in play, depending on whether you're an exchange player or not. So it's on the line to win. Now, who do you fancy at a slightly bigger price that is likely to be in the top three and be profitable as a result?
Sin nominee. Obviously, that slight concern about the stamina, but otherwise, like I say, I think that Weatherby run is probably the best form that we've seen this side of the Irish Sea this season, and I think she is way overpriced.
Yes. This is really boring, Darren. That was going to be mine. See, because for me, like Premier Magic has got every chance of placing, but at 8-1 is not the sort of bet that I really want to get. I know it would be profitable, small to a small degree. I basically get my stake back plus a bit. We've seen nominate at the minute 18-1. It's going to be a fairly decent return. Do you see what I mean? So, for me, it's just a price thing.
If you switch those prices around, I'd be with Premier Magic. It's one of that, like I say, I think you could knock a 1 off her price, and that would be the true reflection of her chance.
Yes, I agree, and I think tactically as well, we haven't really spoken about pace angles and that sort of thing, but I think C Nominate could be the sort of horse that potentially the Irish amateurs dismiss and let her get away, thinking, wow,
Well, she just travels for her races so well. She's got quite a high cruising speed. So I think John will have her wherever she settles and just keep popping along. And
yeah, I'm not saying she'll make it. What I'm saying is, I think it could be dismissed by the jockeys around her, sort of, thinking, well, what's this English form, and who are these English amateurs that we're riding against?
Well, and that has happened in this race before.
Yes, exactly.
2019, I went back and checked the other day after having an argument with Johnny Deneen on Twitter.
I saw that.
Where he slagged off English or British amateur jockeys, and he slagged off British point-to-pointers and hunter chasers, which was very unjustified in my view. Look, as much as Derek O'Connor and the likes are very good,
We'll have to get him on next week.
We got some very good jockeys as well. And I said to him, Derek O'Connor and Jamie Codd gave two of the worst rides I've ever seen in this race in 2019 on Stand Up and Fly and Uccello Conti. They followed each other around at the back. Hazel Hill's up front under Alex Edwards, and absolutely bolts up. And they haven't even got in anywhere into getting into the race. And you're just if you backed either of those horses, you just think, what on earth are they playing at? You know, they've just they think they are the two best horses in the race. And so they thought, yeah, you know, they're going too fast up front. Oh no, Hazel Hill, he's a very good horse himself. And he absolutely stuffs them.
It's the sort of thing you could see happening here with Quintin's Man or C Nominee, isn't it? And they obviously all know a bit more about Premier Magic, having
they'll definitely know about Premier Magic. Maybe they learn, and that's not just, you know, Derek and Jamie are very, very good jockeys and probably two of the best amateurs we've ever seen. It was just more of a point that we've got some very, very good. I mean, Darren Andrews, I know he still claims 5 and he can't claim here, but he's a great jockey. You know, we saw it again at Stratford on Monday when he rode another Hunter Chase winner. John Dawson's, you know, he's good as well. Bradley himself, he's a very good jockey.
Yeah,
and we have very good horses over here. So it was just a ridiculous comment from Johnny.
And Gina came third today on Mr. Bangay, by the way.
Gina's super. I mean, I think she's probably going to be at Fakenham. Unfortunately, she ain't got. They couldn't quite get a horse here, could they?
No,
through one reason or another.
Tiger by the Tail would have come, I think, had it stood at the last. But so now I think I'm going to go first, just so it looks like you're copying me. Quintin's Man would be my bigger. I agree. So basically, I think we've already been through why. So basically, it's quite good in a way because we're making it concise. There's nothing worse than listening to a podcast and getting 5 different bets for every race. So what we're saying is, back it's on the line if you're pretty risk averse and just want a winner. Back C Nominee if you want some profit from an each way play, and for big priced one for your. This is the last bet I ever have because I'm going to become a millionaire, move to Barbados accumulator on the Friday. Stick Quintin's Man in there. And
I mean, they must be absolutely delighted with the fact it's raining for Quintin's Man. Yes, I mean, exactly. It's their perfect scenario, the fact that it's raining, because, you know, like I say, he just looks a thorough stayer.
Yeah. And they must have been delighted with their third place in the Walrus, just dreaming of the prices that they were going to get. So watch that get backed on the day. Of course they were trying, but I think, Darren, that pretty much concludes this. Is there anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. I mean, it's nice that the smaller field means we've been able to go through every runner.
Exactly.
Hopefully it's
it's only been an hour. It's only been an hour. I feel a little bit unclean not backing Premier Magic. I feel a bit like I've done something naughty by not backing him at 8-1. There's every chance he will win. I hope for Brad that he does win. The price is wrong. It's just not.
I just think that he's the right. He might drift on the. Look, if he went to a double figure price, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to have a bit on him. You know, just because. You know, but I think at the moment he is the right price.
Okay. And finally, before I open up another can of worms, how do you see this race playing out? Who's gonna make it? Who's gonna sit up at the back and pick off the piece?
Well, Fern's Lock's likely, you know, he's going to be up the front rank.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's hard to know if it's on the line because obviously he's done both.
Will be prominent though, won't he? You'd think.
But potentially, like I say, I mean, he was midfield last year. I think Derek, I don't know. He could be sitting behind Fern's Lock. He might be a little bit further back if he finds himself getting out of pace. But I mean, chances are in the testing conditions, he's unlikely to get himself outpaced. So my thinking is that Fern's Lock might even be in front, jumping the last, and then at least one horse will outstay him up the running, and possibly he might not even finish in the first three. But I can see him all at the second last at the very least. I think he'll probably still be in front because his class is going to take him that far, and then he's going to be running on fumes, and he won't stay.
Well. That has been a very deep dive into the Foxhunters at Cheltenham this Friday, and concludes this episode of Pointing Pointers. So, Darran, thanks a lot for your time.
No problem. Always a pleasure chatting to you, Ben.
And so next week, well, not next week, the week after, me and Sam will be back for a normal episode. But yeah, we've had a bit of a higgledy-piggledy one this week. So thanks to Redmills, our sponsors as ever, and hopefully you found it very interesting at the beginning. And thanks to Darran for taking us through the big one, our own Gold Cup at Cheltenham. Thanks for listening. I've been Ben Atkins. I'll see you next time.
You're listening to Pointing Pointers, the Point to Point podcast.